is Judy. Welcome to my channel and thanks for clicking on this video. So if you read the title, then you know that this is gonna be a step-by-step guide to how I started my clothing line without ever going to fashion school. So a little background, I have a clothing line called Kene. It's a ready-to-wear women's wear brand that I started in 2020. I had the idea to start a clothing line probably back in 2018, but didn't have the funds for it. So it took a while for me to save up and get to the point where I felt like I could start working on it. So I actually am a pediatrician. So in no way, shape, or form did I ever take a fashion course at all, but I've always been a huge lover of style and fashion and clothes, like for as long as I can remember. So it just felt natural to actually have my own clothing line one day, and I can't believe it, we are here. So far, I have released 2 collections and I'm working on my 3rd. And now that I'm kind of like getting into the swing of things, I figured it would be a super valuable resource to maybe talk you guys through how I did it. I'm not an expert in any way. I'm still learning so much as I go, but I feel like I'm at a point where I can bring people along for the journey because I just feel like it's more fun that way. Before I start this video, go ahead and subscribe and like the video because this is about to become a little series, guys. I actually have a couple vlogs on the way that are gonna take us downtown to the fashion district in Los Angeles, which is where I'm based. I don't know if I said that. We're gonna go downtown and we are going to go sourcing. We're gonna go try on our samples that we make, and I wanna bring you guys along for the ride and I don't want you to miss out. So again, like and subscribe. Let's get into it. I have my handy dandy notes here, guys, so you'll probably see me looking down a little bit because I need to stay organized. Okay, so the very first step that I did was file for an LLC. So an LLC is like a business structure that is beneficial to have because it helps you to separate your personal assets or your personal earnings from your business earnings. LLC stands for a limited liability company, and it was super easy for me to apply for. Essentially, at least in California, I applied through the California Secretary of State, and when you go to their website, whatever state you're in, they'll walk you through the process. I believe it cost me about $70 to file. And the reason why I wanted to start as an LLC instead of just like going for it and not mixing my bank accounts is because LLCs provide a little bit of protection for your personal assets, the money that you have in the bank, in case somebody wants to sue your business, God forbid, or in case your business goes bankrupt. Creditors and people who are suing you can't come after your personal belongings that have nothing to do with your business. So it just made sense for me to file for an LLC and to like have those things separate already so that I didn't have to worry about that in the future. Okay, so the second step is applying for an FEIN. So an FEIN is a Federal Employer Identification Number. I had to think about that. I was like, what does that stand for? And basically that is like a social security number for your business. You need it for tax purposes, and also I believe I needed to have an FEIN before I could apply for like a business credit card or a business line of credit. So go ahead and get that set up too before you start your business. But yeah, so I applied for my FEIN through the IRS website. It's assigned by them, and then after that you can open up business bank accounts, you can file for business credit or business line of credit, whatever you might need. So yeah, that was a super important step just to make sure that all my ducks were in a row. Okay, and the third order of business that kind of falls under this umbrella of taking care of business before you get to your creative pursuits is, at least for me, I needed to apply for a seller's permit. So basically what a seller's permit allows you to do is to buy goods. I needed this at least for my clothing line because I am doing cut and sew, which means I'm buying the fabric, I'm buying the trims, I am actually making my own garments and not just buying wholesale. So I think you do need your seller's permit for wholesale, if I'm not mistaken, actually. But basically a seller's permit allows you to buy things wholesale or buy things tax-free, with the understanding that you will be collecting sales tax from your customers when you do actually start selling whatever goods or products that you plan to make. So I applied for a seller's permit. I have needed that when I've placed orders with specific fabric companies or companies that are selling me trims. All right, now to the fun part. creating your actual clothing line. So I recommend having just like a general theme and idea behind, you know, what you want your collections to showcase. For me, I wanted to create versatile pieces that could be dressed up or down. So I started off with pretty like classic silhouettes, like, you know, a bodysuit or a two-piece linen jumpsuit, because those things are pretty universal and can be either dressy or it can be super casual depending on how you style things. I've always been a lover of fashion and most importantly, personal style. That's basically refers to like how you put that ish on, you know? Not just like what brands you're wearing or how much your outfit costs in general. So I wanted to start with things that were kind of basic, but still lent themselves to inspiring people to, you know, kind of explore their own creativity. After I kind of had a general idea, and you don't really, so don't get me wrong, you don't have to know 100% what you want to do, but it's good to have like some kind of like unifying theme and idea to help give you some guidance. When you got that set, then you can start to do the really, really fun stuff. So for example, coming up with a name. I knew that I wanted a name that was short, catchy, and personal. So Kene is actually the like shortened version of my, I don't know why I did air quotes. Kene is actually the short form of my middle name. I thought it was fun, I thought it was unique, and also it's personal to me. All right, so we filed for our LLC, we got our FEIN, our seller's permit, our name, our theme. Now what? So, contrary to popular belief, you don't really have to know how to draw to have a clothing line. Obviously it's helpful. Obviously, you know, instead of outsourcing things, you can save money by doing them yourselves. That's where the benefit of going to fashion school honestly really comes from. But for me, I was like, I'm not the best drawer. I never have been. So I kind of was like, how am I going to put my ideas on paper and then get those translated into like 3D garments? So what I did was I just started off sketching, and you know, with my sketches, I knew that I could probably, you know, hire somebody to actually, you know, kind of hone in on the details once I at least had a general idea on paper. So typically when you're sketching garments, you're gonna be sketching them onto what's called a croquis. And a croquis is basically like, it's just like a basic outline or silhouette of, you know, a person, so that you can start to like draw your clothes on and kind of show like the fit and the details. I got a translucent sketch pad. I'm gonna see if I can actually find it. Give me one sec. I actually found the pad that I used to like kind of sketch on. Let me see. Oh, perfect example here. So these are croquis. You see that? Hopefully that goes into focus. These are croquis, and basically like when you are sketching, you're sketching your clothes onto these things. I was like, I don't feel like learning how to draw croquis because I cannot really draw. So what I did was I actually got this pad, which is for tracing. And what I would do is I would take this sheet of paper and I would put it underneath a page like this. That way, you see? That way I could actually see the outline of the croquis as I was drawing. And then afterwards, I would take this paper away and I could actually see what I had drawn. So I'll show you some of my first couple of little sketches. They're gonna be kind of hard to see because again, this is on tracing paper. So my first couple of ideas, I just sketched onto this tracing paper. This could be a cute thumbnail. Give me a sec, y'all. Oh, let me get a thumbnail. Perfect. Okay, anyway. So I traced the garments that I wanted to make onto the croquis. And from there, once I had like a couple ideas that I was like, okay, I really do wanna make these, then I outsourced to a fashion illustrator. So fashion illustrators, they're better able to kind of draw out some of those details and add movement and texture to the garments that you know, are wanting to make. But then actually what ended up happening was, as I was working on my clothing line, and as a reminder, I started working on it in like 2020, that was also the middle of the pandemic. So at that time, Clubhouse had blown up like crazy. And the rooms that I was in were fashion design rooms. There were CEOs of major brands there. There were people there who like worked for Nike, K-Swiss, just to name a few. other clothing brands. I actually was able to network in a crazy and invaluable way at that, you know, by being in those rooms. So in one of those rooms, I actually ended up meeting a fashion illustrator, and I wanted to use her because she's African-American, as am I. I wanted to pick somebody African-American who understood, you know, kind of like the body type that I was designing for. Okay, so after I had my illustration finalized, I then went and started looking for what's called a development company. So here is where the benefit of going to fashion school comes in handy. A lot of the things that I was hiring a development company for are things that if you do go to fashion school and you have a little bit more of those technical skills, you could actually do these things yourself and save time and money. I never went to fashion school and I did not want to design things that came out looking crazy. So I knew that I needed to work with a development company that would literally hold my hand and walk me through the process. I basically came across a couple development companies by just doing a Google search. Things in fashion actually are pretty like gatekept, so it was pretty hard to like find a development company that fit my budget, that understood my vision, and that had the capacity to even accept me at that time. So that took a couple weeks, a couple months. And again, this is during the pandemic, so things were taking like 3 times as long as they do now. But in the end, I found my development company and we started our process. So I came to the development company with my own fashion illustration just so they could take me seriously and also understand, you know, what exactly it was that I was looking to design. And once they got my illustrations, we started our process. So the first thing that they prepared was something called a technical sketch. And a technical sketch, it's kind of self-explanatory, but it takes the illustration that's a little bit more artistic and translates it to a like flat drawing that shows you all of the different components of your garment and, you know, how it's supposed to lay. It shows you details about pockets and things like that. So they did my technical sketch, and then from there they started developing something called a pattern. A pattern, again, is something that, you know, you could probably develop if you went to fashion school. But for me, again, I needed someone to hold my hand every step of the way. A way to think about what a pattern is, if you think of a garment and where the seams meet, think about how that garment would look if you undid the seams. You would have different pieces of your garment that are all separate, and that's essentially what a pattern is. Hopefully that made sense. And then the pattern is cut into the fabric that you get, or the fabric that you've sourced, and that's how they start to then put your sample together. I actually skipped a step. Before we get to the pattern, let's talk about sourcing. So once I found my development company, I decided on 3 styles. I'll insert a picture here. I decided on 3 styles. Then it was up to me to source the materials. So that means like actually going out and finding the fabric, the buttons, the zippers, the spandex, all of whatever you feel like you need for your garments. That was on me to go and find. Again, it was during the pandemic, things were open and closed, open and closed. So this took me weeks and weeks and weeks to do because I just, you know, everybody was kind of at a standstill. So I went out downtown. Before I would go downtown, I would like always Google and see what I could find. But then there were some places that I found by just kind of walking around because things are sometimes just in the same area or on the same block. So after a couple weeks, I had all of my fabric, and when I had my fabric, I took it to the developer, and then we got underway with creating the pattern and the sample. All right, so we've talked about sourcing, we've talked about the pattern. After the pattern was creating the sample. So again, the pattern are the different pieces of your garment that are cut onto the fabric. And then after that pattern was developed, they stitched all of those different pieces together, and that is how we created a sample garment. So when the sample was ready, the company would ship it to me, and then I would try it on. So now that it's 2024, you probably don't have to do that. I'm gonna bring you guys along to try on a sample in a couple of weeks. The reason why you try on the sample also is to kind of see how things fit. Does it need to be longer? Does it need to be more stretchy? Do you need something taken in? So the company that I worked with shipped me my sample, and I would try on my sample. From there, I would record a video and tell them the things I wanted to tweak. I would tell them in the video, and then I would put my sample back in the package and ship it off to the company. Depending on where you're starting your clothing line from, if you're in Los Angeles, you'll definitely have the option to just go in person. And I liked that a lot better. I got to do that on my second run because in real time, I could talk to my project manager. I would try on the garment. She would see things in person that you don't necessarily see when you're at home and just on a video. And so I felt like that process was a lot smoother and also quicker and more efficient. For me, this time around on my third run, I'm actually gonna hire a fit model. And I think no matter when you start, it's probably a good idea to have one because you know, fit models are essentially kind of like an industry standard size. And from there you can get kind of like the fit and some of the basic, like how your garment drapes. You can get all of those basic things squared away. And then from there, you can always, you know, do more sizes or upsize. So that was a mistake that I made the first 2 times. I was my own fit model, and you know, for me, there's certain things, like I have a shorter torso, I have a larger bust, so sometimes that can affect the fit of your garment in the long run because you are making things to your body type and not to a more generalized body type. So I didn't have a choice because it was the middle of the pandemic during both of these. So in the future, like if you're gonna be working with a development company, hire a fit model who can try on your sample so that you can also take a step back with your development company and look at how it fits and make whatever changes and modifications you need to make. All right, so after the sample, which I think for my first run, it took me 3 or 4 different samples to get things correct. After your sample has been approved, you like the way it fits, you have no more notes, no more issues, that is when you go into production. Production just refers to like the making of your garment. And it's important to pick a production company that fits you know, what you're able to afford and what you are comfortable with to start with. When it was time for me to go into production, the development company that I was working with, they had something called an MOQ, which is a minimum order quantity, and all companies have this. And that essentially refers to how many garments they can make for you at minimum. So their MOQ was 300 garments. And again, let me remind you, I had 3 styles. So 3 different things that I wanted to produce. And so for me, that would have meant I needed to make 900 garments. This was my first clothing line, first clothing run, first like production run. And I also didn't know how, you know, sales would be. So after I finished my sample, I actually had to find another production company. My development company did not really fit my needs when it came to production, so I had to start my search over again and find a production company that could actually now manufacture my garments. So if you're gonna do that, just make sure that you have your pattern files. So that essentially is like your pattern, but in a digital form. Make sure you have that. You're gonna wanna have your sample. You're gonna wanna have your tech pack. And then that's what I took to the production company so that they would understand what exactly I wanted to make. So production is where everything comes together. They will mark and grade your garment. So that means when you have a sample, it's one size, but if you want small, medium, large, XL, that's the marking and grading process. So that takes a little bit of time. You also at this point want to make sure you have all your trims, which are like buttons, like spandex, you know, zippers, things that you attach to the garment. Oh, and then you also want to have your like labels. So like with your actual brand name on them. All clothes that are made in the United States have to have like a care label. So like wash in the washing machine or whether you hand dry. It just tells you how to take care of that garment. You also have to include the contents of the fabric that you're using. So cotton, spandex, etc. So as that was underway, I then went on a search for a photographer and videographer that I was gonna use for a photo shoot. So photo shoots are so much fun, so are the video shoots. They are a lot of work, so it makes sense that while you're in production, you're gonna wanna already get started on finding your models, picking a photographer, finding a location, and finding a videographer. You don't need all of those things, but for a rollout that is compelling to a new audience and new customers, I just felt like it was super, super important for me to have. I found my photographer by a simple Instagram search. I searched hashtags like LA photographer. I would also go on different like Los Angeles model accounts and kind of tap the details on their pictures. And for a lot of, you know, those photo shoots, sometimes they will tag the photographer. So that's generally kind of how I found mine. And then I reached out to him on Instagram. I also did a search for just like a venue to have my photo shoot. I actually used a website called Peerspace, which is basically Airbnb, but for studios. And from there, I kind of like, you can narrow things down by like the date, the time, the budget, how many people you're gonna have there. And that's how I found the first location for my clothing line photo shoot and video shoot. All right, so once my clothes were out of production, it was time for the photo shoot. I will actually maybe make a separate video on how I prepared for my photo shoot, how I organized things, how I found my models. They were my friends, but how I searched for models before I decided to use my friends. And yeah, so I'll make a separate video about that. And then once that was done, it was time to actually start working on the social media, the rollout, and you know, my website. I'll make maybe another video on my website as well, but I will insert a little picture or video or something here. I used Shopify and I love Shopify. I've always been a fan of Shopify. A lot of the major brands that we shop with use Shopify. Like, you would be surprised. It's relatively intuitive, but you know, there are definitely levels to, you know, web design and whatnot. But I picked it because it had just the best, you know, like interface. And I also felt like it had just like the best integrations when it comes to connecting to like PayPal or connecting credit cards and payment methods. They also have like 24/7 customer service depending on what plan you pick. So I just knew that I was gonna need a lot of hand-holding and that would be super helpful. So I picked Shopify. Once my website was like 90% complete, my photo shoot was done, and I had all of my garments back from production, that's when I picked a launch date. I didn't want to pick my launch date too early, so by the time I announced my brand and the launch date, I basically had everything done. And that just helped to take a little bit of pressure off of my plate so that I could focus on having a really good rollout. But I found it really helpful on my second run to hire a social media manager. I can talk about that also a little bit later, but it's just something to kind of keep on your radar as you continue to grow. You don't need a social media manager. I did it, you know, for the first 2 or 3 weeks myself. But as your business grows and as you decide to like level up, it's always helpful to kind of outsource certain things so that you can make the most of the time that you have and also have a little bit more time to yourself to focus on the more creative pursuits. All right, so long story short, that is how I started my clothing brand, Kene. Hopefully this was super helpful and inspiring for you guys. I do have a couple vlogs that are coming up soon that are gonna take us downtown sourcing. We're gonna go try on our samples. There's gonna be BTS at my video shoots and photo shoots. And I'm really excited to finally be able to be at a point where I can bring people along. I hope you enjoyed. Obviously, check out my website. We're still up and running. We're still current. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye.